Today is Wednesday, August 14th, 2024. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Mark Caleb,
Here.
Brett Boston.
Here.
Dennis Flores.
Here.
Roger Gomez.
Here.
Joe Latino.
Here.
Regina Maestri.
Here.
Sarah Martinez.
Here.
Thank you. We now move into ordinances, final presentation. Madam Clerk, item C1.
Item C1, an ordinance approving and adopting the City of Pueblo's 2024-2025 action plan for the Community Development Block Grant CDBG and the Home Investment Partnership Act Grant Home, authorizing the mayor of the City of Pueblo to submit that application together with all required and necessary certifications, assurances, and documentation to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and appropriating and budgeting CDBG and home funds therefore. Introduced by Councilor Regina Maestri.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have a staff report.
Yes, Mr. President, council members and mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank council and the mayor's office for setting up this special meeting to be able to accommodate the potential submission of the action plan to be in compliance with the HUD regulations. I'm Scott Hobson. I'm the Acting Director of Planning and Community Development. And with me is Brian Gallagher, who is the Home and CDBG Administrator for the city. The projects and programs that are included in the action plan for 2024 were applications that were received by the citizen, the community review committee for these programs in June of 2023, and those were reviewed. So these are actually applications and programs that are more than 1 year old that according to the HUD guidelines, we operate to where projects are submitted almost a year in advance from when the federal funds become available to be programmed in an action plan. And so these were originally submitted or reviewed by City Council in September of 2023, following the review by the Citizen Advisory Committee and their recommendation. With the changeover of 4 council members since that time period, the council really did not, a majority of council members did not really have an opportunity to see or view what those recommendations were before we submitted the ordinance that was reviewed the other night. And so what we're going to do is have Brian Gallagher do a short review of the presentation that was reviewed with City Council September of 2023. The changes are that we've inserted the dollar amounts that we know are correct based on the appropriation letter that we received from HUD on June 10th of this year. So we'll go ahead and go through the presentation that council reviewed in September of 2023. And then we have a summary that we're going to review after that. So go ahead, Brian.
Good evening, councilors. Haven't been here in a while. What we have is as Scott said, we got the PowerPoint that was presented back in September, but it's updated slightly, added a slide or two. People wanted to know exactly how we got where we are today, and
We're having problems with our screens, Brian.
okay, you want me to hold?
Yes, hold on just a minute. Hold on just a minute when we get our screens. You haven't been
Loosen
here in
it.
a while. Our screens don't work most of the time.
Okay. We hold our Citizens Advisory Committee presentations in this chamber as well, and we are technologically challenged as we come through the door too. Clyde, he has more experience than we do, but he is a master at it, as we've proven to ourselves. Starting with, they changed the password.
Oh, you got yours. Oh.
No, I think if we pull
We don't fiddle, we don't mess around.
Mhm. Had it. Yeah.
When I was new with the city, they came to do some updates on my computer and they accidentally left me logged in as the administrator. And I broke it in 2 days.
No, man, Paul.
Well, I thought it resets it with the water card.
Not to brag, but I see things great on my end.
What is the shadow puppets?
Okay, we're good. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you
Okay.
for doing that.
I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I'm not sure where I was, but in starting off in just the general process of how this city conducts the CDBG application process, April of every year, we issue a notice of funding availability and ask for citizens' requests for projects. The department accepts those requests for the entire month of May. And then in June, we internally review them to make sure they're eligible projects that were submitted. Then in July, we submit them to the Citizens Advisory Committee. They review the applications. Pueblo Transit provides us bus transportation, and we tour the sites and do an analysis on site on a Saturday before our presentation hearing. And we do a gauntlet type presentation hearing. It's an 8-hour hearing, and everyone who submitted an application comes and presents their project and affords the committee an ability to ask them questions and what their intent is and what they envision. And we are clockwork on this. COVID did not shut us down. We met in person during COVID in 2020. We did not falter. And this is the process that we follow. After July 18th, the CAC committee did their deliberations and turned in their scores, and they ranked the applications. The funding recommendations that they made to council on September 11th, 2023 were simply the highest ranked application moving down. So they didn't pull one application above the other. What they did, each individual person scored those applications and they averaged that rank. So the highest score was funded first, second highest score was funded second until the funding ran out. So in that process, after the presentation of the projects, there were two projects that were included in that plan that were funded with prior year funding. They were time-sensitive projects, and council took independent action to approve those. One being the rescue mission warming shelter, and the second followed the expiration of state eviction funds. We had eviction funds in reserve from 2020, but the state, the biggest caveat of using that grant was not to duplicate benefits, and we really couldn't get a cooperative agreement with the state on, one person was funding the landlord and one person was funding the tenant, and then that would come back to haunt in a big way. So we elected to come in after they were out of money. And so council issued that agreement in March of 2024. In May 18th, during this whole process, the federal fiscal year starts October 1. The legislature could not pass a budget in an appropriate amount of time. This year, they passed half a budget, and then about a month later, they came in and they passed the other half of the budget. When the legislature passed that budget, they sent it to HUD. 60 days later, HUD produced our allocation amount. So we received a letter dated May 18th, 2024. That timing of that allocation came perfectly aligned with the city's most important deliverable to HUD. So as we completed our consolidated annual performance evaluation report to HUD, our grant year end, that was priority one. We finished that grant report, and then we started on our annual action plan. The annual action plan was written, but it had to be entered into a flawed computer system called IDIS. It likes to log you out and then say you're already logged in when you're logged out, and then keep you logged out for an entire day. After we completed that gauntlet, we needed to do a 30-day public comment period for the citizens to review. We hold public meetings during that time period to explain the annual action plan. We did receive comments from the public via email. Their request was to provide more economic development funding. And typically we have let PEDCO handle the reins of economic development because in just dividing where funding sources come from, there's less funding sources for the community than there are in a business sense. But we have done economic development projects in the past. However, no economic development projects were submitted as a request to the 2024 annual action plan. So we addressed that, and we will include those comments and forward them to HUD. After completion of the 30-day comment period, we were within the city council cycle. The 30-day comment period missed one council cycle by 3 days. And since the public chieftain is no longer done locally, their lead times on printing have been extended. So that did cost us one council session, unfortunately. So moving on, we got to where we are today. August 15th is the deadline to submit this to HUD in order to be eligible for the grant. What the grant includes is $290,000 of CDBG funding for the city staffing. So this grant reimburses the city for administration costs, staffing costs from the Division of Housing. So this goes to offset our division's expense on the general budget. City Council has authorized since 2004 that $400,000 of CDBG funds be used as accessibility ADA improvements in an effort to comply with the Department of Justice, leaving about $550,000 for community development funding. The grant is limited. No more than 15% of the grant can be used for public services. This is a brief copy of the letter that we received from HUD to the mayor on the 18th stating what our allocation would be. HUD issued a notice in January 16th of 2024 that we were not to submit the application before we received this notice. Just breaking down the applications as they received, the scoring went from high to low. So on public services, senior transportation ranked the highest. And that grant is a matching grant. The state has a program to buy transportation buses for senior citizens. They're ADA accessible vans, but it requires a 20% match to buy the bus. So this public service grant request is for the match to buy that bus. So this $30,000 grant is leveraged 5 times. So it multiplies into our community. Next on the list is a teen mentoring program by Catholic Charities. Currently, there are 30 some individuals who sleep in the Department of Social Services building nightly in the conference room because they have no place to put them. There isn't enough foster families. So there's programs are an effort to try and help teens navigate the situation they're in. Next down, we're into homeless youth services. The city was groundbreaking in creating Nancy's Place. We beat out Denver in getting housing put together for children exiting foster care. So when a foster child turns 18, they have to be fully self-sufficient, and that is not generally the case. So Nancy's Place is there, and this resource is there to help them navigate their situation. Homeless supportive services is just that additional service for homelessness when there is dire emergency, there's at least some safety net. And homeless prevention is for individuals who are unable to pay their mortgage or rent. It's a one-time assistance up to $1,000. And if they are in arrears, they can apply to have their rent covered for that month. Moving on to housing infrastructure. Of course, we have the ADA curb ramps. This year is going to be concentrating in the Belmont area. The new census data is released. Certain areas that were qualified are not qualified in the future. So this is beneficial as Belmont will fall out of the qualified area. So we're putting in grant funds where we would normally have to put in general fund dollars. So we have 400,000 as dedicated for curb ramps. Next highest score is minor repairs, and that is an owner-occupied housing program. It traditionally serves people at 30 to 50% area median income, and it's capped at $5,000. This purpose is to come in and fix one item or one class of items like plumbing. It is not intended to fix the entire house. Next on the list is homeowner rehabilitation. It's just another step up in the rehab category. This one can go to $25,000 and it can handle a major sewer line outage. But we're only really eligible to do three projects there. Pueblo County has a similar program directed just for seniors, but they match that funding. So it's a 1-to-1 match so that those homeowner repair projects are leveraged to 1-to-1. Public facility improvements for the Eastside Child Care Center. They've been suffering damage to their vehicles, and this is to create a 2-car garage to house their vans. They've been losing fuel and the catalytic converters, and it's just an effort to secure their stock. The citizens at Crystal Place came to request that sidewalks be put in. That's a neighborhood just off the Bessemer Ditch. I would say a little west of Bessemer. Those citizens came in as well as the Grove neighborhood. They would like some further improvements on near area of C and it's not Spring, but it's the first one in from Santa Fe. Drawing a blank on those angled streets. It probably starts with a plum or palm. And then Posada applied for parking lot improvements and ADA ramp access for their facilities. Now, as they're funded, it's imperative that we provide accessible programs to the community. So this is kind of a 2-for-1 catch-all program. The parking improvements and the ADA accessibility are included. Oh, I moved too fast. Okay, grants that we weren't able to fund simply ran out of funds. But we can see as many grants that we accepted, we weren't able to fund. And we're either running out of batteries or my finger is no good. The Home Investment Partnership Grant is a combined collective grant received between the city and the county. It's received under the name of the Pueblo Consortium. So it's a partnership with the county. The city is the primary entity in that consortium. We receive 87% of the funds. County receives 13%, and it requires a 25% match to receive the grant. During the 2024 annual budget ordinance, that grant was included in the budget and accepted. It was estimated to be $200,000, but our required match is $176,620. I think I left that off the slide, so that was from memory. But because the match was less than budgeted, the general fund will receive a refund of $23,380. Primarily, the home grant goes to benefit people at 60% AMI. 90% of the funds have to be expended on individuals and families who make less than 60% AMI. And that is typically a rental scenario or a tenant-based rental assistance program. Okay. And the slide to the side just breaks down how much comes to the city, how much goes to the county. It has our administration. The city will be reimbursed for $76,000 worth of staffing costs. Unfortunately, the home grant is a little intensive and doesn't pay quite as good as the CDBG grant, but we'll take it. And I think that is, my clicker isn't working, but I think that is 9 of the 10 slides. That is the Citizens Advisory Committee. And I think we can stand down on that slideshow.
So, Mr. President, in addition to the presentation, there's a one-page summary sheet that each one of you have on your desk that breaks down the 5 program project areas that are included in the action plan before you. One is new construction affordable housing. The second area is improve and maintain public infrastructure and facilities. The third is preserve and rehab existing affordable housing units. Fourth is providing housing and service to homeless. And 5 is to provide public services to non-homeless populations. In that, under each category, we have the programs and projects that are proposed to be funded. And you total those together, those total $2,333,757, which is what the amount that the mayor received from HUD. $1,453,413 is CDBG funds. $880,344 are home funds. So with that, that concludes our report, and we would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that report. I want to remind everybody that this is a public hearing. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of this ordinance? Seeing none, is there anyone here wishing to speak against this ordinance? Seeing none, the hearing is closed. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
No.
I move, President Aliff, I move to pass this ordinance as an emergency ordinance to protect and preserve the public health, property, and safety of the city as the deadline for the submittal of the Community Development Block Grant and the Home Investment Partnership Act grant is Thursday, August 15th, 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
Well, we have a motion and a second. Questions? Counselor Maestri.
Can I see the projects that you were not able to fund? Can you put that back up on the screen for me, please, Brian?
Yes, you can. If I have it printed out, if we can't get there. We'll get there. I'm pointing at you, Clyde, but where should I be pointing? Okay. Oh, I went past, sorry. Unable to fund projects. Let me see if there's two slides. Yep. No, just one. Okay, the order of funding, 7 through 13 were not funded. There were infrastructure and public service projects.
Okay, and then the approval that you made that we made in November for the shelter, the homeless shelter, that came out of this funding?
No, different funds, prior year. That was a special allocation of CDBG funds that was received in 2020 during COVID.
Okay,
So
and so they weren't allocated towards anything?
no, and if if you look at the rank here, the top is number 2.
Mm-hmm.
The actual highest ranked application was that eviction diversion program,
Mm-hmm.
and that was used under different funds. So that's why we started with 2, because it was for a different funding stream.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for bringing this forward. I would have liked to have seen it in a work session. My bad for not catching it sooner and bringing it, because we do have 4 new members on council that haven't seen this. We also talk about how citizens don't participate. I mean, there's a lot of chatter out there that citizens don't get to participate in spending, city money. And this is one of the programs where we have a citizens committee that spends the city's money. And so, that the new council members could understand that, as they're being attacked for some of their choices, that there is a lot of citizen input in how we spend the money in this community. And so thank you.
There is actually the city employs a grassroots system to where anybody can come and ask for a project. It is, you have to come during the open application. And the process was actually created by St. Paul, Minneapolis in about 1970. And it was mirrored across the country. And we have one resident in this town who emailed me today, so I'll give him a shout out. There was a young Don Brustel who was a city planner at that time, implementing that strategy that HUD copied across the country when it was created.
Mhm.
Just
Yeah.
history.
And so, because I know we get a lot of criticism for spending the ARPA funds too. When those were all brought forth by a citizen committee, they got to actually see who applied and what they applied for. Council didn't get that privilege. They just got the responsibility to approve or disapprove. So.
So, Ms. Maestri, one of the things that we've kind of taken out of from this having to do the emergency meeting, one of the things we're going to look at is having the work session that provides the recommendations from the Citizen Advisory Committee, maybe do that after the first of the year,
Mhm.
before the new grant funds are actually, we receive what that allocation is. But that would allow for any new council members that are, take office during that period to be part of the, to hear the recommendations and hear that presentation so that it's not completely new to them once we get to the point of having an action plan to be reviewed.
Well, that's great. You know, we find solutions in all of it, right? Thank you. I appreciate it.
Counselor Boston.
So the biggest question I have is on section 3 of the printout you gave us. So the minor repair program that says up to 5,000, is that for 12 at maximum households based on what you wrote? Because by my math, it seems like there might be more than what you allocated for, because 12 times 5, I get 60,000. There's 75,000. I just don't know if I'm reading that wrong or.
I think that's been the average number of actual minor repairs that have been done. We could potentially
Exceed
do-
5,000?
Yeah, it could go to 14 and
Okay.
that would come up to the.
That was my biggest question. I didn't know if
14
the
or-
5,000 was.
14
or
or
not.
15, we could do 15, but the average that we've been doing is about 12.
Technically, there are some soft costs that go into a project. And that is why it's not 15, those soft costs that give it a little pad. In order to do a project, HUD has to approve that particular action and a smaller environmental assessment of the project needs to occur. Things like testing for lead-based paint, having a lead-based paint risk assessment. Asbestos could be disturbed if we go over 32 square feet. And they are now tacking on radon. So we need to do some screening in order to comply with the funding. So that is the difference in those three projects.
Okay, just wanted to double check.
On that same page, if you look down on number 5 to the SRDA transportation program, 20% of cost of new vehicle, $30,000. That's an expensive car.
It's about
That's 200
$100,000.
grand.
It's about $180,000. It's an 11 passenger ADA accessible bus.
It's a bus.
It's a bus. And George, who runs the transportation division for SRDA, counts a little different. He's more conservative than other agencies. A lot of agencies give you a quarterly report and say, these are unduplicated clients in that quarter. George says this is our unduplicated clients in that year.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Actually, I have one.
Counselor Martinez,
I have none.
I have one more.
Counselor Boston.
In the first section, it says the funding for 3 housing units. Do you know how many people per unit there are supposed to be?
No.
No.
Last Monday night, you approved a private activity bond allocation assigning the city's bond to Chaffa in hopes of the Compass Point apartment project. And in that project, they will construct 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom apartments. And we hope to just take a snapshot of that and fund it. Obviously it's a $50 million project. We don't have that, but for whatever we could help assist, they are going to need assistance to make this project land. So we're just taking a slice of what would be there.
Any other, everybody's good? Let's call for the vote.
Mark Aliff,
Yes.
Brett Boston,
Yes.
Dennis Flores.
Yes.
Roger Gomez,
Yes.
Joe Latino,
Yes.
Regina Maestri,
Yes.
Sarah Martinez.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
7-0. If there's nothing else, we are adjourned. It's not, there's nobody here to hear me about the dogs, so.
If I,
It's recorded for posterity. So if you would like to say your
I'd
bit,
like to remind everybody that if for any reason you need a pet, a dog, a cat, please go to our animal shelter or utilize one of our local rescue agencies. And if you do get a pet, make sure that you microchip that pet so we can get him home to you. Again, we're adjourned for a second time.
and it's a beautiful day in the city of Pueblo.
President Aliff. President Aliff, if I could get your John Henry on whatever Clyde is passing around, we don't have much time to waste. No, you are, okay.